Welcome to Focus on Abilities, a program about issues affecting the lives of people with disabilities. I'm Lex Frieden. I'll be your host for today's program. I'm Professor of Health Information Sciences at the University of Texas Health Science Center at Houston and also Senior Vice President at Tier Memorial Hermann Hospital. Today we have a very interesting show, one that you're not likely to see on another channel or network, and we have some great guests to talk about the show. Before I will introduce them, however, I'd like to ask you a question. This is a question we'll answer before the end of today's show. The question is, where did the phrase robot, or the term robot, where did that come from? What was the origination of the word robot? We'll answer the question before the show's over. Now it's a pleasure for me to introduce the guests on our first segment. They are Christine Moran. Christine, welcome to Focus on Abilities.
Thank you.
And Austin Mueller. Austin, glad to have you here today.
Thanks.
Now, Christine, you and Austin are both students at Rice University.
That's correct.
You're seniors.
We're seniors.
And you're in the bioengineering program, right?
That's correct.
So you're just about to graduate.
Yes, we've got about 12 days.
Where's your home?
I'm from Philadelphia originally, but...
And you've been here?
Been here for about 4 years.
4 years, and what are your plans when you finish at Rice?
Well, I'll be staying here for about another 4 or 5 years as I get my PhD at Rice, so...
Okay,
I'm excited.
So you'll be a teaching assistant, you'll be taking courses, and you'll be doing research.
Exactly.
What field are you going to study?
Well, I'll actually be getting my PhD in chemistry, but it overlaps a lot with my interest in bioengineering, so
okay.
That'll be cool.
And Austin, where are you from?
I'm from the Woodlands originally, so just north of here.
Did you go to high school in the Houston area?
Yeah, I went to the Academy of Science and Technology at Oak Ridge High School up in the Conroe School District.
Okay, and you're also a senior bioengineering student at Rice. What plans do you have when you finish?
Well, I'd hopefully in the future like to get neural prosthetics and rehabilitation engineering, but for the time being, I'm going to work for a startup next year doing web advertising and stuff like that. Kind of wait out the economy and then hopefully jump back in, either get a PhD or find a job doing brain-computer interfacing, stuff like that.
Okay, well, neuroprosthetics, you're going to have to explain that, but before we go there, let's just answer the question that we asked at the beginning of the program. Christine, where did the term robot come from?
Well, the term robot is actually a Czech word that was first used back in about, I think it was the 1890s, by a Czech playwright, and the word actually means slave or a person that is involved in forced labor.
And it can apply to an individual, not an object.
The original meaning of the word was for a person, but now it's mostly used to describe something that's inanimate, like a robot.
Machines.
A machine.
Okay, and Austin, okay, bio, what was it?
Yeah, it's neural prosthetics, neurosensory engineering. A lot of it's kind of the new bridge between biology and traditional engineering. It's a lot of, reading ECG signals, any kind of electrophysiological signals, and kind of determining what they do in the body and then hooking them to prosthetics, things like that, so that people who have a loss of functionality in their limbs or other parts of their body can get a prosthetic that does more than just, attaches to their body. It can actually work like their arm or their legs would have.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
What we're going to talk about here today, by and large, is a project that you all were engaged in, a senior design project. And every student at Rice has to complete a project of this nature. Austin, is that?
Yeah. All of the engineering students that are seniors have to engage in some type of senior design project.
And Christine, how did you all happen to choose the project regarding robots that you've chosen?
Well, the very beginning of the year, back in September, all of the different projects were presented to us, and I believe you were there with Dr. Kathy Ambrose, and gave a presentation about the project, a proposal, if you will, and we got to choose which of the projects were our top choices, and Austin and I both said that this one was our first choice, and we were assigned to it.
You're working with other colleagues as well, right?
Right.
Who are they?
We are working with 3 mechanical engineering students, actually, Beth Rowan, Claire Krebs, and David Meyer.
And each one of them brings a different perspective, I guess, from the field of mechanical engineering. You all are bioengineers, and that means, I guess, strictly speaking, engineers that work on life, right? The particular project that you've been working on, however, has to do with rehabilitation. And there's the nexus between what we do on this program, what we talk about a lot, and what you all are doing. Rehabilitation is really a process that helps people who've been disabled by illness or accident or whatever. And the rehabilitation process involves learning, it involves exercise, it involves a programmed course of practice in many respects. And you all chose the opportunity to develop a robot that was also capable of doing rehabilitation. Austin, can you describe the theory behind the robot?
Yeah, so everything that you just said is kind of along the lines of what we did. Basically, we have three components to our design. We have a exoskeleton, which is used for rehabilitation. We have a wireless communication, and then we have an assistive device, which we've brought today. And so what we do is we have basically this exoskeleton that people who have been disabled, who either had stroke or spinal cord injury or something else to give them functional loss, can hook up into this exoskeleton, which is this is our device right here. But basically, they have 4 degrees of freedom that they can do. They can do elbow flexion extension, wrist pronation, supination, abduction, adduction, and palmar dorsal flexion extension. And so each of these things...
The exoskeleton is a device that actually fits on the outside of an arm, or
so it works for upper limb rehabilitation.
Okay, so a person has to move their arm in order to. Now this guy is really out of control here, right? the person has to move their arm in order to make the robot move.
Yeah.
Right.
And the more they move their arm, the more the robot could move. And if a person really needed to exercise their arm and had a little bit of function, they would push harder against it. I mean, everything can be controlled.
Yeah.
So you have different amounts of resistance depending on what ability you have and what you need to exercise.
So what we want to do is build a device to where they would be forced to practice their rehabilitation to get this device around their house so that they can do tasks that they might not be able to do by themselves.
Okay, so there's basically 2 purposes to the robot. One of them is to enable a person to do rehabilitation, and I suppose in the process make it functional and fun, perhaps.
Yeah.
Christine, you're driving the robot now, right? It's
right.
not. It doesn't have a mind of its own, does it?
No, it's not going crazy. The idea is that the person was doing their rehab while controlling this. We just have a regular remote control because we couldn't bring the exoskeleton here, but you can see it has a couple of different things it can do.
So it goes up and down, drives forward and backwards. It'll go in circles, turn right, left.
Turn.
And you've built it with tracks so that it will. Why did you use tracks instead of wheels?
We decided to use the tank treads instead of wheels because it would give it a lot more traction on a variety of different surfaces that you might encounter in the home. For example, carpet. It also is a lot more stable, so if there's something on the floor or if you have a threshold in your home, it could easily go over the bumps without tipping over or skidding or anything like that.
Now, that analysis, all that analysis was part of a design process that you all were engaged in. I mean, it's not as simple as getting an erector set and screwing some things together, right?
I wish.
We have about a 4-inch binder right now that's filled with paperwork that we've done throughout the year. Anything from, initially we had to set out a bunch of design parameters and say, do we want this thing to fit in a 5-foot cube box? Do we want it to be in a 2-foot cube box? How much do we want it to weigh? We have to make sure it doesn't emit any harmful chemicals. I mean, every single day of the semester we had to do something to plan for our design, and it wasn't just build it and go. We're working with people here. We're working in their house. We need to make sure that it's safe for home use, and every single step we had to lay stuff out.
So you did surveys. I know you went to TIER and you met with some of the therapists over there and asked their opinions about what was necessary. All of this background research you did before you ever got to the point of figuring out how to put together the pieces.
Yeah, well, I mean, if we don't know, exactly what the patients and the therapists want, there's no way that we can give them a successful solution to their problem. And so it's very important to find all that out before we go ahead and design this, because we can design anything we want, but if we don't have experience working with these people, then it may not be a useful solution.
But there are other limitations and considerations too. Christine, you all had a limited budget. It's not like you could contract with a NASA contractor and build a robot. I mean, you had a finite amount of money, you had a finite amount of time, you had a finite amount of people who were actually able to work on this, and you had to have a finished product in order to graduate, right?
That's correct. Yeah, so we had funding from mechanical and bioengineering as well as from the UT Health Science Center, and so that was a limited budget, and we only had a year in which to complete the project with 5 people. So we split up the project into different parts and sort of worked in parallel for a while, and that worked really well for us.
What all parts, I mean, obviously there's the mechanics of the wheels turning, the motors and so on, but there's also the electronics, the connection between your controller or the exoskeleton and the robot itself. What other aspects are there?
Well, those were, you just named the 3 main things we focused on. We had 2 people that focused on building the robot itself, 2 people who are working on figuring out how to map the motions of the exoskeleton. You had to, the robot, the motors in the exoskeleton had to communicate the position data to the computer. And then we had 1 person working on the wireless communication between that computer and our robot. And then we all came together at the end to try and figure out how to put the pieces together.
That's a very complex task, but I guess that's what school is all about, right?
Yeah.
Learning to do things, and essentially that's the same approach that you would take in the commercial world if you were building a robot for GM or GE or whomever. What do you feel like are the next steps with this robot?
There's a couple of different things that I think are for the future. The first thing that needs to be done is improving on the prototype that we've originally built. We used half of the pieces you see we machined from scratch from metal parts. The other half we ordered from an educational robotics company called Vex. They do a lot of high school competitions and things like that. So I think in order to improve on our design, we would have to do a lot more custom designing and get some more powerful motors so that the robot can carry more heavy loads.
Yeah, for example, right now, what's the most this robot could lift?
So the scissor lift itself, the part that goes up and down, can actually support about 1.5 pounds. But the claw itself, because the motor on its wrist isn't very strong, it can only support about 0.9 pounds, which is the equivalent of a 14-ounce beverage.
So it could lift a Coca-Cola in a plastic bottle?
It could.
And it has?
And bring it to you, yes.
Okay. We have some television photos, pictures, and video that will run in the background here too, and people will be able to see the robot in action other than just here in the studio. But you would say that the next steps with this robot, if we were going to develop it further, would be to make it stronger, more powerful.
Yeah, just to optimize it for the home. And the other aspect of it would be the variety of applications, because this robot interfaces with the exoskeleton that we were talking about for the upper limb rehabilitation. But not only are there a large variety of rehabilitation devices for the lower extremities, there's also joysticks and things like that. Those could also be interfaced with the robot. And our robot does something very specific. It can grab objects and move them from location to location. However, if you want to design more specific robots, say that one that helped people put on their shoes or brush their teeth, you could design a whole fleet of robots that could do a large variety of tasks that were controlled by one exoskeleton.
And I think, yeah, Christine worked a lot on the physical aspects of the robot, so that's a lot of the stuff like that. Claire, David, and I worked on the software, and I think there's also applications there, logging exercise routines every day, and maybe uploading to the internet so that a clinician or a therapist could log online, see what's actually being done in the house, and then maybe make adjustments based on that. The program that we use, you can actually switch around which motions control which functions of the device. And so if they see that somebody's doing one motion a lot more than the others, they can kind of switch that around, and give the person more experience in different exercises. And then there's also, you may be able to hook up functions to preset exercises. So say instead of just lifting the arm up to make the robot move forward, maybe you have to do 5 up, 5 down, and the robot will do something for you. So there's also different ways to kind of change up the exercise routine to make sure that the patient at home is doing what they need to do.
Yeah, this is really just the beginning. There are so many possible applications. It occurs to me, one of the challenges that we have working in rehabilitation is getting patients to continue their therapy after they go home. I mean, they will do it in the hospital or the rehabilitation center because they have a scheduled time and a therapist there working with them, and it's, you know, it's part of the program. But once patients leave the hospital or the rehabilitation center and they go home, they're sort of, you know, up to their own discipline. And if television's too good, then they're going to be watching that instead of doing their exercises. But with the robotic control and the possibility to control it or see what's happening wirelessly, it seems to me that you could set this up over the internet. I mean, so that therapists would know what was going on with the patient while they're doing their own exercises and provide them perhaps some positive reinforcement feedback, and as you pointed out, change up their exercise rehabilitation regimen. It might also be interesting to have the robot at their home while they're in the hospital and have them operate it or demonstrate the use of it from the hospital via the wireless networks, and that way they would already be trained to use it. It's already in their home when they get there. I mean, there's so many possibilities.
Exactly.
Did you all really get excited doing this project, Christine?
We really did, because that was our whole goal, was to motivate people to continue the rehab when we go home, because we know that the longer you continue your rehab, the more progress you're going to make in your recovery. And so I personally don't like to play video games, and those are sort of the current technology for motivation, so we really wanted to design something that everyone would enjoy using. And then when we finally got it working with the exoskeleton, I was driving it around using the thing, and this is so much fun. So I'm really glad that it was fun, and we've shown that it can work, so that in the future maybe another adventurous senior design group can really put it in practice.
And Austin, you really believe that robots can be connected to people's thoughts and to the nerves that are working without needing to depend on those that aren't, right?
Yeah, and I mean, there's been some studies that are out. Andrew Schwartz at University of Pittsburgh is doing neural prosthetics with monkeys and stuff with electrode caps, and basically they'll hold a marshmallow out in front of the monkey that they're testing, and they have it hooked up to an arm, and you know, the prosthetic arm will reach for the marshmallow just based on the electrode signals. There was recently, the University of Wisconsin they can update your Twitter with the brain, which is, you know, there are some aspects that you kind of need to look into the research and say, you know, how much of this is just consistency and experiments and how much of it's actually breakthrough. But on the whole, I mean, with the high resolution measurements you're getting from electrodes in the brain, and as they start to kind of determine which areas of the brain do what, I think there's a lot of stuff that you can do with it, a lot of practical applications for anybody who's, you know, lost functionality, whether through a disease or through an accident.
Okay. Well, you all have done remarkable work. It's a great project. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I know that you'll get a good score on it for your final exam, and I know that you'll continue to be interested in this field of science as you move forward in your careers and probably make a lot of contributions in the future. Thank you very much for coming to Focus on Abilities today. Christine, thank you for being our guest.
Thank you so much.
Austin, thank you for being with us here.
Thank you.
And good luck to both of you. We'll take a short break from Focus on Abilities, but we'll be right back with our closing segment today. Thank you. Welcome back to Focus on Abilities. I'm Lex Frieden, your host, and we've just finished an interesting segment on the show with two Rice University students who built a rehabilitation robot. And now we're joined by a rehabilitation engineer, Dr. Tom Kroskup. Tom, thanks for being on Focus on Abilities today.
Glad to be here.
You are the director of the National Center for Human Performance at the Texas Medical Center. What is the National Center for Human Performance?
National Center for Human Performance is a place where we bring people together from across the medical center and actually from across the nation who have an interest in human performance and what can be done to enhance human performance and help young people make good decisions that will enable them to have active lives throughout their lifespan.
Now, your career is focused mostly on the field of rehabilitation engineering, and I know that you've made many contributions to functional independence by people with disabilities through the work that you've done on seating. I think you have a number of patents. You've developed a number of solutions to problems that people with disability, challenges that we face in daily living. You've had an opportunity to see the Rice Rehab robot. What do you think of it, Tom?
I think it's a very interesting project. I think it has a lot of useful technology in it, and I'm impressed with the quality of the work that the students have done in laying out the design and what they want the robot to do and what it can, and making sure that it can do what it needs to do, and investigating the environment where the robot's supposed to work.
The idea of a kind of two-for-one solution here is interesting to me. The fact that the robot is designed to encourage and support and facilitate rehabilitation, while at the same time engaging in some functional activity. That's an interesting combination of
assistive robotics and rehabilitation robotics.
Yeah.
Yes, it combines both fields or both technologies pretty effectively, and it would be interesting to see how well the people who use the robot feel after they've used it for several weeks in their homes. We had a similar project that we did with some Rice students when I was at TIRR, and it was quite effective. We had good response from the people who used the robot around their homes.
Tom, robotics is a field that's been around a long time. I mean, we build cars with robots. We make adjustments on spacecraft with robots, but in my experience and to my knowledge, we really haven't developed robotics in the field of disability very well. Do you think there's possibilities in the future?
I think there are lots of possibilities in the future. As the students were talking about, one of the big problems with the robots is coming up with man-machine interfaces that don't frustrate the user to the point that the technology becomes marginally useful. You want to be able to do things that are naturally seem natural to get the robot to do what you want it to do. When you have to go to extraordinary means to get the robot to do things, and when it takes an exceptionally long period of time to get the robot to respond, people get frustrated, people get upset with the robot, and nothing works well then.
The process that the students followed in their construction of the robot is generally the same process that industry would follow if they were producing a robot to serve someone?
Yeah, I think there would probably, in industry, there'd be more market research that would be done, but the design process is the same process, yes.
And given the opportunities out there and given the needs and demands, there's so many things that robots might be able to do, and we're going to wind up as people get older and need help in the home and fewer younger people to provide assistance to them. Demographically, we're going to be challenged to provide assistance. We may need robots to help people with disabilities. Our aging workforce is moving toward that direction now. So aren't we in a good location here in Houston and the Texas Medical Center and in this part of the country where we have NASA nearby and outstanding educational institutions like Rice, the University of Houston, the University of Texas, and so on? Aren't we in a location where robot development might just occur naturally?
I think it's a very rich environment for developing the next generation of robots. The work with man-machine interfaces that goes on within the institutions in the medical center is incredible. As you point out, we have strong connections with NASA, and we have connections with Texas A&M and other, and Rice and the University of Texas, where there's lots of mechanical innovators that can help make devices and machines that will serve the needs of people. And the point that you bring up with the aging population, I think, is very good, because that increases the market that's available to buy the devices, which will bring the price down and increase the drive on industry's part to get involved in developing robots that can be used in people's homes.
Well, speaking of functional robots, I mean, the students mentioned that among their research, they learned that helping people brush their teeth, eating, one of the demands that we hear a lot from people with disabilities who are trying to live independently in the home is help turning in bed at night. All of those functions could be aided by robotics. And simply the question is who would pay for it, where would the development occur, and so on, right?
To a great extent. The big problem, or one of the challenges that we have when we bring robots into close proximity to people, is making sure that the robot doesn't do any damage to the person. And there's a lot of work going on across the country, or actually around the world, looking at how to put sensors in the robots so that the robot can get the signal that it needs to stop doing what it's doing before it causes harm to the person who's using it.
All right. Lots of challenges out there, but a lot of possibilities. Tom, I want to thank you for being our guest on Focus on Abilities today.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here.
I want to thank all of you for watching Focus on Abilities, and HTV for putting us on the air. We've had a great show today about robotics and rehabilitation and people with disabilities, and we'll have more interesting shows like this. Please tune in next time for more Focus on Abilities.